Hello, and thanks for joining us for Packed P is for Peter. That's me, ACD. Right next to me here, the lovely Miss Astronaut Cowboy Doctor, Master of Science. Help us out by subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, Audible, Apple Podcasts, any of your favorite podcast services. Leave us comments. Also, leave glowing reviews on Audible and Apple Podcasts. Most importantly, though, tell your friends. You can help us keep the lights on by becoming a patron at patreon.com/PeterCoffin. Your monthly support gets you into the Discord server, gets you exclusive content, and you see some content before everyone else. So you may have heard a little bit about the Food and Drug Administration announcing they're going to start the process of banning menthol tobacco cigarettes. This is victory. Anti-smoking advocates applaud FDA's move to ban menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars. This is a move that anti-smoking advocates, the big general, a move that was heralded by anti-smoking advocates as one expected to improve the health of groups most likely to smoke menthol products, including children and Black Americans. A move that the Food and Drug Administration, a non-elected body, which has power over all of us and what we eat, what we consume, they just can make choices for us. And apparently, they improve the health of people. I guess it makes sense to maybe preface this as, no, we don't think cigarettes are healthy.
Yeah.
The direction I'm headed in there, I'm worried somebody might go, are you advocating for cigarettes?
But if you do smoke, we get it.
Yeah. First off, why was George Floyd killed? George Floyd was killed because he did ultimately a minimally harmful act that was outlawed, right?
Well, I mean, he was killed because of the police state and how it's racialized violence disproportionately affects Black people.
I'm saying what initiated the
impetus of the event was in passing a counterfeit $20 bill.
So we're talking about a very minor, extremely inconsequential crime. Like $20 is nothing. It's basically nothing.
It's very possible that he also didn't know
that it was counterfeit.
Yeah. But then why would he be in a position to receive that? Because of the impoverishing class conditions that we live in.
Again, yeah, absolutely inconsequential thing that police were called and he was killed for ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about what happens when 85% of the Black cigarette smoking population smokes menthol cigarettes. What is going to happen when you outlaw a totally inconsequential aspect of cigarettes?
Right.
Where's that going to go? It's going to go to the same place. There are going to be people killed over this. I'm going to say that right off. I know that that's probably extreme, but I mean, that's why George Floyd died. He died over something inconsequential.
They didn't ban all cigarettes.
No.
Which also would have been weird. But they banned the primary medium of an addiction to nicotine. That 85% of Black people with that addiction use to smoke. I think it's very easy to, but we'll just walk through that again. When you have an addiction to nicotine, and you, by the way, are disproportionately affected by poverty and shitty living conditions where your material conditions are compromised, you're also more likely to smoke. You're more likely to be stressed. You're more likely to be, even if you don't smoke already, predisposed to picking up negative coping habits that include health risk behaviors like smoking. And then the medium through which you typically do that is taken away from you.
It'll start an illegal market, for one. That's going to happen.
Which, of course, why wouldn't you use that? If you're addicted to a substance and it's something that you have that is one of your primary ways that you have learned to alleviate stress, you're going to use that. And then what body is upholding these laws and reinforcing them? The fucking police state.
Next aspect I want to get into, as I was looking for statistics here, I came across a study called Disparities in Retail Marketing for Menthol Cigarettes in the United States in 2015. So, according to this study, price promotions for Newports were more common in neighborhoods with the highest quartile of Black residents, for instance. Prices of Newport cigarettes were cheaper in neighborhoods with the highest quartiles of youth, Black residents, and lower income households, which is why if you see poor people smoking Newports, you don't go, what? You go, oh. So it's more than just like you're taking away like the thing that these folks
have relied on for coping with the shitty conditions with which this government has provided them.
Exactly. And
in its subsistence on white supremacy and capital.
And it's not just that they're taking that away. It's that this system has also very specifically targeted them in getting them to want this specific product. Like, so you kind of have a two-pronged problem here.
Libs are going to be using George Floyd and Eric Garner's deaths to push forward this FDA decision-making about how it's protective towards racial and ethnic minorities. Right.
That's why.
Yeah. So rather than making them disproportionately affected and at even higher risk than they already are for police violence. Here's a headline from AMA that says FDA agrees to ban menthol to protect African Americans.
The AMA is the American Medical Association for folks who are unaware. They're an association that you can find hatred for in just about any group of people. Like, particularly with neurodivergent people. They really hate the AMA.
They won't even stand up for their own doctors.
Well, yeah. And they're also pro for-profit healthcare, which like you don't even have to know any of the other stuff. But the FDA agrees to ban menthol to protect African Americans. It takes Black people and removes their agency. It makes them into passive participants in society, as opposed to people who are able to make decisions.
Also, why is the AMA still afraid to say Black?
I don't know.
Like, they're health professionals. They know that African American isn't like an accurate term for a lot of Black people in the United States. That they're the kind of, it sounds like the AMA is like the organizational embodiment of the white person who's like describing someone, and they go like a Black person, and like look around, they're like Black.
A Black person, an African American.
Yeah.
You know, have you ever seen somebody do that? I've seen somebody do that.
I grew up in a very white, Catholic, wealthy suburban environment. I lived in that every day. I probably heard that every day.
But they do it with the shrug, like, you know what I'm saying, right? African American, Black?
This is the AMA, though. They should know that that's not accurate.
But to me, like, one of the biggest problems with this type of thing,
the paternalizing.
Yeah, the paternalism that you see, the liberals see Black people as like this passive actor that you have to like clear the path for and make sure that everything is fine. You can't criticize them. Everything they say is perfect, and they have no agency. And that is like the root, in my opinion, of the kind of liberal racism that you see. Unfortunately, like conservatives like glom onto it. They think like, oh, the liberals are racist. That means I'm not racist in my dumb shit.
Well, this is what we were just talking about. And I know I use her a lot because I love her, but God damn, is she misguided. My mom would see a headline like that and be like, oh my God, do they think Black people can't think?
Yeah. Which is...
And you know, she's very conservative, Trump supporter, but she would be right in like diagnosing this like not even subtle, but we've been like made to think in the way that neoliberalism controls the conversation about race. We've been made to think that it is an anti-racist act. But it's really...
It's absolutely not.
It's an essentialist and racist movement to put forward in the FDA, but then also a way to market it as something that is designed to protect.
Yeah. And this is the thing that's important to think about. Like, the marketing does target Black people. As that study said, they target Black areas in terms of bringing the prices down, doing price promotions, promoting Newport heavily in terms of advertising, signage outside of gas stations and whatnot. That's a very interesting study, by the way. I will link it in the show notes. So here's another headline. With menthol cigarettes, Big Tobacco targets Black lives. Don't allow profiting from death. Obviously, this is an article that is advocating against allowing menthol cigarettes. It's from several days ago.
Before they started this whole FDA thing.
Yes.
Okay. But like, if you think about the whole thing for longer than 6 seconds, they're criticizing Big Tobacco for targeting Black lives when what they're advocating for is making them more susceptible to being killed.
Yeah, absolutely. So. When you're saying, oh, Big Tobacco, you're targeting Black lives with your menthol. That's so terrible.
Let's make a law that's consistent with the rhetoric of Richard Nixon.
Let's make a law. Let's make a law that criminalizes an activity that 85% of Black tobacco smokers participate in.
Exactly. It's just, you think about it for longer than 6 seconds and you... Oof.
When I first heard of this, I kind of didn't think a lot about it. I was like, that's stupid. Like, if they actually care and think that banning will work, they would just ban cigarettes. So they're contradicting their own logic here. But, I mean, obviously, I don't think that would work either, because Prohibition didn't work. The war on drugs didn't work. And ultimately, what did those things do? They created illegal markets based around these things, and also criminalized things that people were going to do anyway, and ended up punishing tons of people that wouldn't have otherwise been committing a crime in the first place.
Right.
From Al Capone's perspective, banning products people love totally works. Here's the thing. It's going to create an illegal market, and people are going to continue doing this stuff. And the reason for that is because it's cheap. And it's a coping mechanism that may not be a good coping mechanism, but it's the one that they have been surrounded with, for one, like in terms of marketing, in terms of, like we showed with the signage here.
Right, they're disproportionately marketed towards as well. So the effects of that is ingrained.
Exactly. And taking all of that out of it, maladapted coping behavior is not exclusive to people who smoke.
Yeah.
It's a thing that happens. Like,
because we live in a capitalist society.
We made the episode of Pact a few weeks ago called Cope, about that specifically, about how oftentimes people use the wrong coping strategies for, dealing with the fact that there's bad news in the world. Well, think about the fact that basically everything can be directed towards tobacco or some other addictive substance as a means of coping.
Maybe this is something that we can investigate a little bit in this situation where the way that this issue is being pushed is to say that we are promoting health.
We're improving the health of groups most likely to smoke menthol products,
including children and Black Americans. Yeah, sure.
And we're banning menthol to protect African Americans.
Right. Who here is pro-life in terms of abortion?
Exactly.
So it's interesting how in this situation, that's how that is being presented. Whereas I think many of the liberal advocates for this kind of thing would take a completely damning stance towards similar kind of rhetoric used to criminalize abortions, to protect mothers and unborn fetuses, to promote abstinence-only sex education.
Absolutely.
And they'd be vehemently against those things. But with this sort of, and I do think that is kind of like the woke Ouroboros, and that like we're able to, this is a group of people that we are clearly in the public eye is attending towards as something that most well-meaning people are interested in seeing what can we do within, not analyzing this way, but within the American capitalist structure to improve the lives of Black people with the continued legacy of racism pervading their lives. And so this is being marketed as something that is really good for that, in a way that is atypical for most like liberal or at least progressive waxing causes. And so they're like co-opting conservative rhetoric to promote this. And then that also gets me thinking of like, why is this happening at the governmental level? You know?
Yeah, it's a good question because, I mean, what does this ultimately do? Well, let's say it's probably going to kill a few Black people in the way that George Floyd was killed, in that they were doing something that is inconsequential but illegal. That's probably going to happen.
And we'll probably incarcerate a lot of people.
That's where I was going with it.
Right.
We'll probably incarcerate a lot of people, which, as you know, is what makes it legal to enslave them.
While looking ostensibly good to the uncritical eye. By saying, oh, well, like we put this legislation in place that is conducive to health promoting behavior among this vulnerable group. How wonderful that the government did that.
But then,
while reinforcing the police state in that process. The biggest public health concern, one of the biggest public health concerns that we have is violence inflicted on people.
But then you also, because you're going to be incarcerating people on the basis of this, and they'll probably be disproportionately Black people because of
85% of Black
statistically speaking, who is most likely going to be involved here.
And then, children, I guess. And then, where does that come in?
They're not going to end up they're not going to immediately end up in the prison system.
Yeah,
they may end up in the prison system. Prison system,
double since 1985.
They're trying to build a prison, is what we're trying to say.
Utilizing drugs to...
That's what this song is about.
It is.
It's actually what this song is about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Prison song.
Yeah, they're literally doing that. That's okay. You know, I issued required reading before, but this is required song listening.
But what I wanted to say was, as you ultimately incarcerate, which will probably be disproportionately Black people, you also, because you're not talking about class and you're not talking about the fundamentals of the system, going to end up with the same fucking ideology that Black people make bad decisions.
Yeah.
You're going to reinforce that amongst people who already think it. They're going to be like, well, they shouldn't be smoking menthols. It's illegal. Like they outlawed that to help them.
Right. Exactly. Well, obviously putting this like individual condemnation on people who are disproportionately affected by the police state resulting from this law, but while also the origins of the legislation are paradoxically within that ideology that Black people are essentially unable to protect themselves. It's and this is a really good example with the sex education thing, because that's actually a lot of the rhetoric that conservatives use, and that like in low income Black communities, like young girls are at risk or are at particularly high risk of engaging in these behaviors that are not helpful to them. So we really have to promote abstinence, which we all know what that is. Like, we all know how that's worked. I think most of us are familiar.
It doesn't work. Like, and again, like prohibition, war on drugs, abstinence only, pro-life, all that, none of that shit works. Like, give people the ability, give people agency in their lives. And when I say that, I don't mean give them the choice to smoke or not. I mean, give them the ability to do what they want with life, to own their fate, more or less.
Well, yeah.
And you're going to see so much less of this.
It's like when people at the individual level don't want to give homeless people money because they're like, oh, what if they buy alcohol or cigarettes? It's like, yeah, what if they do? Empower them with the fucking agency to do that.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do.
Well, and let's just go ahead and say this, though. If you abolish class, there wouldn't be homeless people and they wouldn't be in that position. Like, that's real agency, where you are not economically coerced to do things to exist. And if you're incapable of doing those things, you are not punished for it. That's all for today. Thanks again for watching. This is Pact. I'm Peter. This is Miss Astronaut Cowboy Doctor. To help us out, click like, follow, subscribe, whatever. Leave us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Audible. To support us, become a patron at patreon.com/PeterCoffin. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you later.